Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. This is the Walk of Shame for UFC Fort Lauderdale and Bellator 220. So I got you guys a little surprise. My homie Oscar Willis of the Mac Life is joining us today. Oscar, say what's up to the people, man. How you feeling?
What's up to the people? I'm feeling fresh. I'm feeling funky. I'm feeling good.
All right, good. So let's go ahead and kick this off, man, because we just got finished watching the main event of Bellator 220. Looks like Rory MacDonald and Jon Fitch fight to a draw. Rory MacDonald retains the title, but man, what a monkey wrench this throws into the welterweight Grand Prix. Because correct me if I'm wrong, nobody's advancing off of a draw.
Well, I mean, could you ask for anything more Bellator? Really? And that's not to put them down, but yeah, no, it's definitely a monkey wrench. We were on the phone while the fight was going on, so I sort of half saw it. I will say that, and I actually thought Fitch won. From what I saw, Fitch won the fight, but yeah, I don't think a draw is what anyone's after.
Right. I mean, during that conversation, of course, we are talking about the fights. Of course, we're friends, so we're talking about other stuff too. So I really thought that Fitch did win this fight. It started off to me looking like Rory was going to dominate this. Like he started that first round off looking really sharp. He was landing some good shots. He was very good defending at the takedowns, and then slowly but surely it turned into a Jon Fitch fight, and Jon Fitch is still Jon Fitch, man. Like if you are going to get taken down and not really offer much from your back, I mean, this Jon Fitch fight to win all day long.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's actually funny because it's almost like they tried to get some personal beef into this, with Firas Zahabi talking about Jon Fitch's previous with performance-enhancing drugs and all that sort of stuff. It's like they tried to heat this up. But at the end of the day, it's a Jon Fitch fight. He either loses or he smothers you. And from what I saw, he smothered.
Yeah, and that's it's unfortunate, I guess, as far as the Grand Prix goes, that we have a draw. And the welterweight Grand Prix, by the names attached to it, by what we've seen so far, it's shaping up to be a pretty exciting thing. I mean, you could say what you want about Jon Fitch not being the most exciting fight in the world. You could say what you want.
Well, I mean, lest you forget, Paul Daly and MVP fought in this tournament, and I'll be the first to say I was disappointed in that contest. So that's, to put it mildly. But yeah, I think that's two fights so far. We've had potential blockbusters that haven't lived up to it.
I mean, yeah, definitely the MVP Daly fight did not live up to expectations, but you think about the names attached to it and you think about the potential of the future. Of course, MVP advancing is something that Bellator would love to see. That's something that I think the average fan would love to see, because if we see the MVP of old, then we could potentially see something spectacular. Then with this fight, at least, I mean, quite frankly, maybe they're saying this on the broadcast right now, and we obviously are not watching the rest of it. We're not watching the aftermath right now, so we can't say for sure whether or not this is going to disrupt the Grand Prix plans. But I would assume, because Bellator kind of does what it wants to do, that Rory MacDonald will end up advancing since he did retain his title.
I agree. I assume, like you said, Bellator being Bellator, and no disrespect to Bellator, I think they do a great job. But I would assume if they were going to look at this situation like, how do we deal with this? I assume Rory goes through on a technicality.
Yeah, that sounds about right, man. So, all right, so let's go ahead and briefly talk about some of the other action on the Bellator card this evening. So let me pull up this screen. I'll make sure I got the right screen up. So yeah, I always screw up names, so you know how that goes. But anyway, Alimi Lay McFarlane defeated Veda Ortega by TKO from a cut.
Exposing her skull, I think I think that's a technical term.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ! Like that was the disappointing thing about this fight is that it ended on this cut. It ended on a medical stoppage, but it was shaping up to be a really good fight. A lot of people, myself included, assumed that McFarlane was going to go in there and do what she normally does, and that's dominate the grappling, find her way to a submission, get an easy victory for her. I believe it would be her fourth title defense. So that's what I thought was happening. But Ortega, while she was losing, especially that first round, she held her own, but I still thought she lost the round. But it was a fight. It was a genuine fight. She was putting up a battle. I say Bellator needs to run this one back. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a rematch. A lot of times in combat sports, people look at like a doctor's stoppage for a cut as this real negative thing, right? No one really wants to see that. Everyone wants to see the fight go on. But in this time, the cut was, she looked like she'd been shanked in the head. So I think it was a correct stoppage, but I think at this point, why not run it back? I mean, why not, right? There's no reason not to.
It's not like that. It's not like that division is loaded with talent in Bellator. So you kind of think, who else are you going to put there?
Yeah, well, I mean, why not? And then let's build it up. Like, oh yeah, I'm the butcher to your face. And it's like, oh well, you got lucky, you got saved by the cut. I mean, let's do it. I mean, that's what Bellator's all about. They love it.
Yeah, I think that they should just run that one back, because you have a fight that you could market there just on the fact that it was much more competitive than a lot of people would have given it credit for. So
absolutely.
There's that. So, all right. So the next on the card was Benson Henderson versus Adam Piccolotti. Benson Henderson comes out with a split decision win here. I scored it 29-28.
Benson Henderson got a split decision.
Yes, he did. He got the split decision. Your reaction is exactly what I would expect, because once again, Ben Henderson, now everybody at Sherdog at least scored this 29-28 for Piccolotti. I scored it 29-28 for Piccolotti. If anybody was on Twitter following along with my assessment here, but man, once again, Ben Henderson gets a win, a split decision win that you put kind of a question mark by. I mean, I'm reminded of the Frankie Edgar fights. I'm reminded of the Josh Thompson fight, where Ben Henderson is looked at favorably by the judges.
Yeah, maybe it's just his thighs. I mean, they're very impressive, but certainly it's funny because Benson Henderson is a former UFC lightweight champion, and that should be his legacy. But actually, the more he continues fighting, his legacy is becoming that guy who gets all the split decision wins. It's kind of just a quirky thing at this point, but yeah, he got another one.
Yeah, but I do think once again that this plays into Bellator's favor. I mean, Piccolotti definitely has potential to be somebody that is going to be a force to reckon with in the future. I mean, the fact that he was able to completely dominate Benson Henderson in a lot of the grappling exchanges shows what this man is capable of. But you think in the short term, I mean, when I spoke to Benson Henderson, when he was cornering, I believe, Juan Archuleta ahead of Bellator 214, he told me that he doesn't have that much time left in the sport, and he wants to maximize that time. So I think one way to maximize that time is to kind of push him forward toward the title picture. We've got Michael Chandler fighting the smaller Pitbull brother as he moves up to lightweight pretty soon. And, once again, Bellator kind of does what it wants. So why not throw Benson Henderson against the winner of that? I mean, we recall the first Ben Henderson and Michael Chandler fight was actually very closely contested and a very exciting fight. So why not run that back while you can?
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to be a bit of a shill or this new age guy where it's like, records don't matter. But at the same time, the promotion gets to set the narrative. Benson Henderson has this history. He has this stock. It's a pretty easy sell if you want him to fight for your championship. Just like, he's had a couple of fights, but he still emerges. He'll grind out that win, even if it, nearly kills him. He'll get that split decision. They can still do it. There's a way to sell that. Why not?
Right. All right. So let's move on from that. Phil Davis against Liam McGeary. That fight went kind of the way I thought it would, except it had a lot more violence than I initially expected. I thought Phil Davis would just simply dominate the positional battles, but that wasn't quite the case. I mean, he did toward the end, but it was also set up by very effective striking on Davis's part. He used the leg kicks very nicely, footwork to keep McGeary kind of guessing where he was going to be next until he was able to really damage those legs more, get him to the ground, and I would say sink in a rear naked choke. But please tell me if you saw a choke sunk in. I did not. I saw McGeary tap as the choke was starting to be applied.
Well, I mean, listen, I can't disagree with a word you've just said, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but the main reason is I didn't see the fight, and therefore I have to assume you're correct.
Well, that would be a correct assumption. that was kind of, but I watched that replay again, but it looked like he just tapped as Davis was swimming his hand around his neck. So
Man, it happens. It happens. Like people sometimes they're in there and they just think, oh, you know what, F this, I'm out. The club closes at 4. You know.
Yeah, well, I guess someone's partying in San Jose tonight. So, all right. A quick word from the YouTube live chat. The homie Fugatti of Mixed Combat Radio joined the chat saying, "What up? What up to you, sir? Always a pleasure."
How good Oscar Willis's hair is. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. You're a good guy.
Fugatti is not a liar. He is a man of integrity. He's honest. So, yeah.
Oh.
Mate, I'm sorry.
I'll spoil Avengers Endgame on your live chat and no one will ever watch again. I would never do that.
All right. So before we devolve into one of our normal just goof off conversations, let's the last fight on the main card, because I did not watch any of the Bellator prelims. Maybe I'll go back and watch some of them tonight. But anyway, Gaston Bolanos, he defeated Nathan Stolen by first round KO. I don't think anybody with half a brain was shocked. You bring in a prospect like Gaston Bolanos, and then you have him fight a man like Nathan Stolen, who is winless in Bellator and is in fact on came into this on a 3-fight win streak. 3-fight losing streak. Yeah, that the writing was on the wall. This was Bellator matchmaking at its finest.
Well, you can criticize Bellator in a number of ways if you want to, but building prospects, yeah, they're pretty good. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they definitely take more of the boxing approach as far as building up people goes. All right, so I guess
speaking of boxing, Tyson Fury won that fight, right?
Absolutely not. Deontay Wilder won that fight. It was a very close fight, but Deontay Wilder won. So before you start talking reckless,
you're just giving away all credibility, but it's fine. Come on, Ken.
All right, so so that kind of wraps things up for Bellator. If anybody wants to talk more Bellator, go ahead, hit the chat, and I will address those questions. But let's get into it for the UFC. Overall, man, I thought this was a good card. When you see the Bellator card juxtaposed with the UFC card, I saw in Bellator a lot of fights that have relevance. You had 2 title fights. You had a couple other fights that have meaning in those divisions and in the future title pictures. And the UFC card, yeah, of course, the main event is definitely something that's going to factor into the middleweight title picture, and we will get to that in just a second. But overall, this was just action matchups. This was just bleed, man. What do you think?
Well, look, they're holding the event in Florida. They need to capture the attention of the Floridian people. Yeah, they just had some guys coming off the parking lot and scrap. Certainly on paper, it looked like you said, it wasn't fights with divisional consequences. It was just fun fights, right? I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would have the opinion that on paper, the fights didn't necessarily live up to what they were meant to be, perhaps. But I think they just tried to have a fun event. It was just like a fun event. I think so far in this ESPN deal, they've had all these like very dramatic main events that have real like implications. I think this was the first one in the deal, first of many, I'm sure, where it was just, hey, bit of fun.
Yeah, and I think one strange thing too about this fight is that the main event was something that was pieced together really last minute. This originally was rumored to be Romero versus Paulo Costa. Then the ongoing New York State Athletic Commission / USADA thing going on with Costa dropped him out, put Jacare in there. So it was going to be a rematch of Jacare versus Romero, which very clearly would have big implications for the title picture and would be a marketable fight. But then Romero gets taken off the card due to injury, and Jack Hermansson steps up on what he got. He fought 2 weeks ago against David Branch.
Yeah, but he didn't take any damage in that fight, so.
Right, but just coming off of back-to-back camps, it's got to be tough on the body. But this looked like it played into his advantage. Hermansson, the cardio looked like it won the fight for my eyes at least, that Hermansson was able to keep a lot of volume with his strikes. He was able to move around effectively. And while Jacare definitely had the power advantage and seems to be a physically stronger person, it just didn't matter. The speed, the footwork, the volume looked like it won it for Hermansson. What's your take?
Well, I mean, I certainly agree with what won it for Hermansson was definitely the speed, the output, but I don't know how much I would put that down to his back-to-back camps as much as, listen, Jacare made it pretty clear from the moment they had the press conference in Atlanta, he didn't want to fight this guy. He really couldn't be effed, to be honest. He was fighting this guy because he got promised a title shot. He really was kind of underwhelmed by the whole thing. He made that entirely clear throughout fight week. He was like, oh, I saw an interview with MMA Junkie. They did a scrum, and he was just like, I'll beat this guy but while Jack was very impressive, and there's no denying that, I do think there are some fights you look at one fighter and be like, he actually lost that rather than the other guy won that. I'm not saying that's the case with this. I'll have to rewatch it, but I definitely think Jacare was not the Jacare tonight. He seemed, if you looked at the expression on his face, it reminded me of when Luke Rockhold fought Bisping for the second time, which Michael Bisping won by knocking him out in the first round. But it looked like the expression was like, oh, I don't need to do this. I'll just walk through this guy. And that's the impression I got from Jacare through the whole fight. I just don't think he realized how tough Jack was.
And, I think that's a fair assessment. And I think one other wrinkle to that, I think this is the first time we've realized how old Jacare is. Jacare fought like a guy who's about to be 40.
But having said that, though, I mean, it's not just that his output was lesser and his enthusiasm was lesser. He was also fighting guys much taller, longer range. So he was always going to be up against it, trying to get in. And in the third round, especially and late in the fifth, his body shots were immense. I mean, he still has it. It just seemed like he wasn't. It just sort of, like I said to you on the phone when I was, very drunkenly talking to you about it before we did this chat. I was saying it just sort of seemed like he was waiting for Hermansson to fall over, and he was sort of like, well, he's gonna lose eventually because I'm levels above him, and it just never happened. Hermansson's tougher than he thought.
Before I go ready to write Jacare's obituary and say, okay, this is absolutely the beginning of the end. I do want to see him fight one more time, but I had the feeling that he had trouble pulling the trigger at times. Of course, he had that third round with a lot of success with the body shots, but overall, it looked like he had trouble pulling that trigger, and that is normally that sign that it's going down.
But couldn't that be attested to the fact he got dropped in the first? That then he was like, oh shit, I better not.
Absolutely, which is why I say, hey, I want to see one more before.
Who again?
Off the top of my head, I'm not quite sure. I mean, with Gastelum, yeah, Branch would make sense actually. Branch would be a good one.
Gastelum feels a bit too high level for Jacare right now. No?
Yeah, and also they just fought. Like if had they not fought so recently, I would say book that fight. But I think Branch would be an appropriate test for Jacare right now. I think both of those guys are at a career crossroads, and you have to wonder how much they have left in the tank due to their age and experience.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So let's move on from that, and Greg Hardy versus Dmitry Smolikov. That's a co-main event, huh? That was a co-main event. What you think, man?
I think the end of this fight was the first time I called you this evening, drunkenly shouting at you down the phone. Listen, it's co-main event. I really can't be asked to get into the politics behind making Greg Hardy the co-main. We all know why they're doing it. It is what it is. They did it once already. It's undeserved, but they're doing it, and that's just the era we're living in, unfortunately. What I will say is, what I was very surprised was sometimes I would never ever accuse a fight of being fixed. That's just complete nonsense. But sometimes there's a guy who just doesn't really want to be in there. And Greg Hardy's opponent, he had a date at a grocery store after this. I don't know. He just did not want to be in there. Yeah,
it was it's like that first punch lands. I think it was an uppercut that lands, and then he just wasn't there.
Mate, let's be honest. It was fucking weak. Like, even at the end of the thing, when he got taken down, he's in his guard. He's meant to be the wrestler. His guard's as open as it can be. Greg's landing these big hammer fists. He's not trying to scramble. He's not trying to shrink. He just lets the finish come.
That's exactly what it looked like. It looked like the UFC found some tomato can to throw in there and get beat up by Greg Hardy, and that's exactly what we got.
But the thing is, this was on ESPN Plus. If this was on ESPN, where you got all the casuals watching, I understand it. But on ESPN Plus, you have to assume it's MMA fans watching it, which means they see through that. So that doesn't make Greg Hardy look any better. That makes Greg Hardy look like he just beat a dude who doesn't want to be in there. It doesn't make his stock rise. It just makes the other guy irrelevant. It doesn't make Greg. All it does is corrects Greg's UFC record. That's all it does.
It does, but I think the idea is trying to get the casual fan to buy a subscription to ESPN Plus, or at least get the trial so they can watch Greg Hardy fight. I think that's the purpose in putting him behind that paywall, because there is literally no merit to a fight that bad being a co-main event on a UFC card. It's ridiculous. And this is, once again, this is without taking into consideration the public opinion of Greg Hardy due to his past.
Right. Yeah. So I'm going to ignore that for now. We can bring it up if we want to, but if we just focus on the athlete, I really do think a lot of this whole Greg Hardy experience stems from the fact that Dana White has actually wanted to see an NFL quality athlete enter the octagon. I think that's really what this is all about. He just wants to see what one of those guys can do in the octagon. Now, if we're going to be completely calm and just generally analyzing it, he looked better than his first fight. He was much calmer. He shrugged off any takedown defenses. He looks fine.
Yeah, he didn't go pride rules, so that's an improvement. Yeah. So I mean, but still, it's kind of like the extra effort it takes to put him in such a prominent position is ridiculous. It's really silly.
I agree with that, except I would agree with that, except when they first had him featured as a co-main event, they also had him on the same card as Rachel Ostovich and Paige Van Zandt, both women who've had terrible experiences in their lives. And it's almost like the UFC had it like they ripped the Band-Aid, as you Americans are. They ripped the Band-Aid off. It's like it couldn't be worse than that. He was on the same card as someone who'd suffered the very thing he's been accused of. So it can't ever be worse than that. So now, anytime going forward, it's like, well, it's not as bad as the first time. So it's almost like it doesn't. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, one thing for sure. I mean, we, for a living, we cover a very violent sport. So we have a certain desensitization to violence. That's just kind of what it is. Just as a culture, we do. So if you can desensitize people to the gash that McFarland opened up on her opponent tonight, if you can desensitize people to some of the beatings that we saw today, and Oliveira and Perry, and all the just chaotic violence, then yeah, I'm sure you can eventually sell us on Greg Hardy being someone that you can put in a prominent position of the card, and nobody getting too up in arms about it. I mean, the UFC does have plenty of interesting ties to domestic abusers and warlords and all sorts of stuff. So that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Listen, at the end of the day, without getting too into it, the way the world is at the moment, we have the attention span of about 24 hours. All the UFC needs to do is wait out the controversy, and by Greg Hardy's 6th fight, no one will be talking about it, and life continues until we all die.
Yeah, that's a pretty sad but true way to look at the world. So, all right. So I guess we'll go ahead and table that discussion unless someone in the chat wants to bring that up. But we got to talk about this Cowboy Oliveira and Mike Perry fight. Mike Perry gets the decision. What was the? Do you remember the final score on the scorecards? Absolutely
not. I think it was 2 rounds to Mike, 1 to Charles.
Right, that's okay. That's what I had to 29-28 for Perry. Man, this was such an interesting fight because, like, it seemed to be a matchup between two guys who habitually show very, very poor fight IQ, and they make it their mission to just go out and just do things, regardless of the consequences, regardless of whether it makes sense or not. They just want to go out and do things, and I initially went into this thinking that Mike Perry would be the one to do something reckless first, but he would do something reckless on the ground, similar to how he fought Cowboy Cerrone, where he shot in for a takedown after having some success on the feet and he got caught in a submission. I saw something very, very similar happening this time. However, it was the other way. Cowboy ends up fighting Mike Perry's fight and loses pretty handily.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, we need to pay respect for Mike bringing racial harmony to the UFC. I think that's very, worth noting. But
thank you, Mr. Perry, for that.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy. 2%. But no, I first of all, like talking about low fight IQ, when they were doing the entrance and Cowboy Oliveira was dancing his way in, and the camera cut to Perry, who'd already walked in like super fired up, as he's wont to do. He was dancing in the octagon. I actually looked at him. I was like, I think that guy's about to have an adrenaline dump. I really think he's like overexcited. He's on, he's not had the best of luck recently. And I really thought he was going to sort of be overwhelmed in front of his hometown crowd. And in the first round, Cowboy was like throwing all these fucking crazy spinning kicks and all this sort of stuff. And I thought Perry looked very slow. And indeed, the first round went to Brazilian Cowboy. And then, as you say, it's not that they have a lack of fight IQ. I don't think that's fair, but they have ceilings, right? They have ceilings. And Cowboy sort of spunked his load, spinning his kicks in the first round for no real reason. And then in the second and third, Perry showed good head movement. Got to give him credit. He showed good head movement. But I will always remember MMA Fighting's Luke Thomas said this, I think after Perry's second or first fight. He said, you got a dude with an iron hard chin who his mentality for fighting is essentially wing the punches in. He's like, how many bar fights has that guy won? I'm sure Perry is the toughest dude in any bar he walks into, but you watch him slip past Oliveira because Oliveira had bad fight IQ. You just have to assume these guys have ceilings. I think Perry is so much fun, but every time I watch him fight, I'm like, and here's your cap. The guy's where he's at. He's never gonna fly up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of both guys, actually. I mean, I think we learn very quickly that Mike Perry is not necessarily contending for a title anytime soon. And I think we've learned the same thing about Cowboy Oliveira quite some time ago.
But the difference is, I think Cowboy Oliveira could be a real trouble for me. I think the guy's got amazing grappling. He just never seems to go for it. He just loves to swang and bang, as Derek Lewis would say. And I think he's got great grappling. I actually thought he was going to take Perry down and just out-grapple him, but he just never seems to go to it. I think he could be better than he is. He just doesn't care enough to be better than he is.
Yeah, I see. But then once again, I think that traces back to fight IQ, because fight IQ says you use your strengths more. And so that's why I put them both in that same category. But I mean, hey, it worked out well for our entertainment purposes. It was a very exciting fight. It was interesting to watch. I was thoroughly confused by Oliveira spamming spinning kicks in the first round while he was gasping for air. That just made zero sense to me, but it was fun to watch. I did like that Mike Perry had a very aerodynamic haircut that allowed him to move forward very efficiently. So that there was a lot of entertainment value in this fight. Don't really see what it leads to in the future. With these two guys, it doesn't even matter.
I tell you what it leads to. The fight I thought was lost. It's Mike Perry versus Darren Till time. It's time.
And you know what? I'm not mad at that. I'm really not mad at it.
Before Till fought Masvidal, I thought Till's going to beat Masvidal, get back in that title picture, and Perry's always going to be, 10-5. Dude, let's do it. I want to see carnage, please.
Yeah, I mean that's just going to be. I think for Darren Till, that is the fight you want. That is a big name right there that you can have a very, very good fight against.
Well, also in MMA, sometimes there's these like little meme jokes that catch on, like Artem is the GOAT, right? And I think Artem's amazing, but that's like a little joke that the MMA fans sort of grab and they run with, right? Dude, that infamous spar day between Till and Perry long lives in the memory. Was it a spar or a spar? Like, the backstory's there. Let's just get these two. And, not to be biased, but I'm a fellow countryman of Darren Till. God bless him. He's just stolen a taxi. Fair enough. We've all had a few. But it's about time you just get these two fucking crazy people and put them in a cage and see what happens.
Yeah, I'm all for that, and I think you still can have an eye to the future with that, because my first instinct says Darren Till wins that fight against Mike Perry, and
I agree. I mean, I spoke to Mike after their infamous spar session, and he didn't say as much, but he was saying it was a fun thing. But I think Darren's dimensions helped him out a little bit, But because they're both such fan favorites, even after losses or whatever, they're sort of like, it's irrelevant, their record. They're just fan favorites. Whoever wins that is right back up there. Yeah.
All right. So I want to address a comment here in the YouTube chat. So Fugati actually says, when we're talking about Cowboy versus Perry, that it was like someone trying all the moves in a fighting game. And that was kind of the sense I got, was like, just two people just button mashing and just hitting each other. And maybe you'd see somebody like Perry started fighting like somebody started kind of understanding how to use the game just a little bit, like just enough to actually win.
Yeah, no, it was a bit like when I beat you here, when you were staying here, I beat you on UFC. It was like one.
I'm sorry. What are you just blatantly lying on my own podcast network?
Sorry, mate. The connection's bad. Just let me talk. But it was like, so one of you does the spamming things and the other one just holds down the power button and throws in the hooks. That's what it was. I mean, like you said, I don't really know what his game plan was. Like, you can't throw 4 spinning kicks and not land one and still think, yeah, this will work out. But that's just not how it works.
Yeah, this spinning kicks, that's what's up.
Yeah. I've missed every one, but eventually.
Yeah, eventually I'll catch them. They get slower with every one. I'm gasping for air. I can barely breathe, but it's gonna land. You mark my words, it's gonna land.
Yeah, once the stamina bar's down at my ass, I'll still catch it. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, hard pass on that coaching strategy there. All right, so we gotta talk about one for the old men, Glover Teixeira versus Ion Cutelaba, and Glover Teixeira weathered the hell of a storm. Ends up with a finish in the second round, finding the rear naked choke after some very solid ground and pound from the mount position. What was your take on this fight, man? How did you see this one going down originally?
Well, not to bring real life into the podcast life, but as I said to you on the phone, I said there's a stereotype about, like, very tough Brazilian and South American fighters. Like, if you pressure them, they'll crumble. And I said to them, I said to you, I was like, there's exceptions to that rule. And you said to me, well, look at Glover tonight. And that's exactly the case. He weathered the storm, showed, he's nearly 40, the veteran ability to stay in there. And then second round, he got the win. He basically came out and just got the win. It's funny, like, Glover's who he is because of the Jon Jones fight, in my opinion, right? He fought Jon, had this big streak. Jon kind of did what Jon Jones does. But he's never been unlikable. I really like Glover, and I just think 205 sort of lends itself to that, where you have these characters who are like, oh, they're plucky underdogs. And I think that's who Glover was tonight. I really like Glover. I'm happy to see him do well. Yeah, even if he is still just punching a bag in Connecticut or whatever he usually does. I don't.
Yeah, that's the best punching bag in Danbury, Connecticut, right there, making UFC contenders. So Glover Teixeira, man, he almost looked like. To me, of course, no one wants to jump in the fight and accept getting pummeled upside the head, because make no mistake about it, Cutelaba was ringing his bell very effectively in that first round.
Well, what a win that would have been for him, right? Glover's
big time. I mean, but also, as the veteran, you can't sustain a pace that hard, that fast for too long. It's just the human body's just not going to work that way. Especially when you're talking about the bigger guys. You're talking about a guy who probably walked in the cage at about 230 pounds. He's probably not going to be able to just have this consistent power output throughout an entire 15-minute contest. So
yeah, I mean, in MMA, don't have that cardio output unless your last name's Diaz or Dillashaw. I mean, you just
too soon. Too soon. Yeah, man. So
that was a great joke by me.
That was. I'll give you credit for that. And unfortunately, I'm probably going to hear this same joke repeated by you many, many times on one of our many phone conversations. So I can't wait. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, man. But I almost felt like Teixeira accepted that he was losing that first round, and then just said, "Okay, let him punch himself out." And then you saw toward the end of that first round, you saw Kudalaba kind of back up, take a few deep breaths, and not be able to replicate the same success to the same degree as that even that first round continued. I was reminded of the Lesnar-Carwin fight, where Lesnar was turtled up and he's taking all these punches, but he's saying, while it looked bad, he's like, I feel everyone being less effective. Each punch felt less powerful. And I wonder if that was what was going through Teixeira's mind throughout that first round.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think it was in the Perry Oliveira fight, and I could be wrong, but there was a moment where someone just covered up and let the opponent wail on them.
That was Oliveira at the end of the second round, I believe.
And commentator Dominick Cruz said, you can't really do the rope-a-dope in 4-ounce gloves. It just doesn't work the same way. You find the gaps and you get in there. But on the other hand, while that's usually the case, if someone's against the cage and they're just getting wailed on, it's very rare you don't see a punch slip through. When it does work, the other guy does gus out really hard, because this isn't boxing. They don't know how to throw their punches as efficient as boxers do, right? So if you have an MMA fighter throwing 25 punches super fast, it does gas them. It does gas them. So, and you know, we're talking about experience. He's nearly 40. He's done this a few times. You're absolutely right. It's quite plausible. He just knew, like, well, I'm not hurt, so have at it, you know?
Right. I think that was expert veteran savvy right there by Glover Teixeira. And now we got to start having these conversations again. Where does Glover stand in the picture? I mean, as long as Jon Jones has that belt, he's probably not going to get a shot, but he's a guy who can definitely affect what happens in the title picture by knocking out guys who otherwise could be looked at as contenders.
So what you're saying is it's Johnny Walker versus Glover Teixeira next.
That's exactly what I was about to say. That's exactly it.
That's what it is.
Yeah. I think that's where we're headed. Glover Teixeira is definitely proven himself to be the guy who can take out someone that you might have had high hopes for.
But he's also a name. He's also a name. They love Johnny Walker. Presume it makes sense. If Johnny Walker can do what he's done so far to Glover, they may as well just put him in there against John already.
Yeah, I mean, he called out Corey Anderson, who was the last person to defeat him, and I don't think the UFC puts that one together because
without being a dick, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it wouldn't most likely would not be a fight that anyone would be clamoring to see. Obviously, it could fill in somewhere in a card and be fine there, but not that. And this is also not to say that Corey Anderson is the guy that the UFC wants to see in a title fight, but I think you can put that together a little better and have more people interested than if Glover were to beat Anderson, knock him out of the title picture, and then fight Jon Jones again.
The truth is, at 205, the only way, if you're not Johnny Walker, who's obviously someone they're quite high on and they really like, and he's very flashy and he's obviously got a big future. If you're not Johnny Walker, the only way you fight Jon Jones is if you beat the winner of Gustafsson Smith. That's the only way you're getting there. Whoever wins out of Gustafsson Smith is fighting the next dude they want to be the number one contender. That's the way that division is.
All right. And
facts. Don't come at me, bro.
Okay. You said that. All right. So yeah. So now this is the second time in a row that Glover Teixeira has sent a potential prospect packing. As you will remember, he finished Carl Robertson not that long ago. So. All right, so the next fight up on the card would be John Lineker versus Corey Sandhagen. I loved this fight. I thought this was a great fight in so many ways, man. I scored it for Lineker. I scored it 29-28 Lineker. I'm not mad at almost any other scorecard. This ended up being a split decision for Sandhagen. What was your score?
I agreed with you. I gave the last two to Jon. I thought in the first round he was kind of struggling with the range, and then in the second and third he sort of landed that, especially to the body. He was landing big hooks. So he'd land to the body and then he'd swing at the head, and Sandhagen would move out of the way of the head, but he'd still land the body. And in the judges' eyes, that should count. He still landed to the body. It was fun. It was a very. Whenever you see John Lineker's name, you're like, oh. Let's see who he might potentially murder today. But it was the perfect sort of matchup, actually. And credit to the UFC matchmakers. It's very technical, near brawl. I don't think it ever got to actual brawl, but very technical and very good fun. I gave it to Jon. I don't think his stock goes down. It was good fun.
Yeah, that's one really good thing about this fight. I don't think no matter who got their hand raised that their stock would have gone down, because at least in Corey Sandhagen, had he lost this fight, obviously he didn't, but had he lost this fight, you're looking at a guy who gave Jon Lineker all he could handle, and he did it with effective strategy, because no matter what, Sandhagen fought the smartest fight he could fight.
100%. But I tell you what, I will say, if Jon Lineker had won, I think Sandhagen, people would have been a bit more quick to dismiss. The fact that Sandhagen won and it was a bit more controversial, it's almost like a tie in people's minds, right? They're like, wow, I mean, what a great fight. Even if he didn't win, what a great fight. If Sandhagen had lost, they'd be like, well, Jon Lineker, he won that fight. But I think the fact that Sandhagen won, even if it was a bit controversial, it sort of makes it a tie. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense, but
like that tie makes more sense than Fury Wilder or something. But I mean, like that,
I'm sorry, so you're breaking up. What did you say?
I just said Tyson Fury won that fight. Huh?
Please don't get on the Walkout Network and start lying. My subscribers do not appreciate it. So thank you for that.
I didn't realize you had the Wilder family subscribed.
So you still getting those checks directly from Eddie Hearn?
How dare you, sir? I just enjoy his fucking haircut and his charming wit.
Yeah, man. So, but yeah, I do. I really did like this fight a lot. So one thing that I thought Sandhagen was doing a very good job of was not taking the full brunt of a lot of these shots. I mean, Lineker was definitely landing, but man, he was very effective at kind of fading back, getting his head kind of off the center line a little bit. And while Lineker was touching him, it didn't get that full brunt of force, at least until Lineker was able to get him up against the fence.
No, he was definitely rolling with the shots, and that's why Lineker started going to the body, because the head moves, the body doesn't. So that's definitely true. He was rolling with the shots, but at the same time, Lineker's 5'3" with a reach of, teenage Groot or whatever. I don't know what you want to say, but like, you can't pull that movement against guys with longer reach. That just doesn't work out that well. So while he had the perfect game plan against someone like Jon Lineker, a big just swanger and banger, as he goes up, he'll have to change that. You can't just do that against everyone like that. The head movement, we've seen it time and time and again. The head movement looks great until it doesn't, right. And then it looks ridiculous.
Head movement is a very tricky thing to pull off effectively in mixed martial arts.
It's like the same. It's like Anderson against your favorite guy, Chris. When Anderson's head movement failed, it was like Chris Weidman. Just when it looks bad, it looks bad. When it looks great, it looks great.
Right. Agreed. So, but I do like the fact that Lineker, who we have this reputation, we have this image of him being this reckless brawler. He just goes out there to decapitate you with every punch. He was actually fighting with good strategy. He answered the problems that were being presented to him very effectively, even though he didn't get his hand raised in the end. So I will another note about this, man. I wonder how Sandhagen's affection for Dominick Cruz affected the commentary in this, because if you listen to the commentary without watching the fight, they made it sound like Sandhagen was in there putting on a clinic.
Well, listen, so it's funny. Dominick Cruz is in obviously a thankless position, right? He's commentating. Often he's commentating his own. Like Angela Hill, he's commentating, and she's a teammate of his. And it's when I was watching that fight, I actually listened because they brought up the fact they are teammates, and he was still trying to be very, very objective. And I think even if we don't know Dominick Cruz as a person, the way he's like, mildly robotic, you would assume he tries his very hardest to be objective. So I'll always give him the benefit of the doubt. But one day, if I get him one-on-one, I will ask him, do you analyze your own commentary the same way you analyze fights? Because I think everyone could learn from their own work. And I wonder if he would ever look at his own things and be like, I did show too much favoritism there, or I wasn't objective enough, Yeah,
I wonder too, but I mean, Dominick Cruz is also seems to be a very defiant man in a lot of ways, and I don't know him very well personally. I've only spoken to him maybe twice, but he's a guy who seems very set in his ways.
Fun fact about Dominick Cruz: the only interaction I've ever had with Dominick Cruz, I was a brand new journalist, brand new to the game. I'd just broken up with my ex-girlfriend, and her favorite fighter was Dominick Cruz. And at my first media day event, Dom was there taking notes. And I walked up to him. I was like, hey, can I get an interview with you? He was like, actually, I'm just doing work, if that's okay. I was like, yeah, it's fine. And then as I walked away, I said, hey, incidentally, my ex-girlfriend, you're her favorite fighter. And he's like, oh, he's like, get your phone out. And he's like, get the camera out. And he made me record a video, and he went, what's your ex-girlfriend's name? I was like, Gabby. And he's like, to the camera, he's like, I don't know why you left him. You should take him back. He's a really cool guy, and you're a really cool girl, and I think you guys can make it work. And I was sort of like, and he was like, you're welcome. I was like, thanks, Dom, I guess. I walked away, and I was obviously like, never going to send her that. And then I got, had a few drinks, and I was like, look at this video. And then she didn't reply.
Yeah, I would have sent that video the moment it was finished recording.
Because I thought to myself when I saw it, I was like, I don't want to ruin her favorite UFC fighter. And then I texted to her anyway. And then I was like, oh yeah, I just did it.
Depending on which ex you're talking about, they're definitely an ex or two of mine that I would send whatever to ruin their favorite fighter for them. So yeah, there's that. So
did I ever tell you on New Year's Eve I got super drunk and I just text every ex-girlfriend I ever had? I mean, like down to the age of like 11. I just found them and text them, but I didn't text them Happy New Year's Eve. I just text them random stuff. I text them a link to David Bowie being like, what do you reckon of this interview? And just like I got far less replies than I anticipated.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why.
I really thought we were on better terms, but apparently not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surprising to me.
Yeah. Remind me to take your phone away from you next time we're out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll take your phone away from you. All right. So, the first fight to open up the main card was Roosevelt Roberts and Thomas Gifford. Not a whole lot to say. I mean, Roberts did what he was supposed to do. He dominated this fight. I scored a 30-27 for him. I thought he controlled the positioning pretty much everywhere. He had effective striking, although I did find it curious that he elected to start grappling again in some spots. And Gifford really didn't have much to offer other than what I would describe as really scrappy BJJ skills, just enough to keep himself from taking too much damage, but not anything to write home about that's going to throw up a submission or change the course of the fight.
It's like the old thing when you go into jiu-jitsu classes, like for the first bit you survive and then the next bit you escape, and then after that you start to learn, so he was just still on the survive level, I think.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we expected to happen in that fight. But, we're not going to spend too much time on the prelims, but just a quick couple notes. Takashi Sato defeating Ben Saunders in the second round by KO. I actually was not paying much attention while they were announcing the rest of the card, and I forgot this fight was even on it. So as I turn away from the TV and I go to grab a beer, You're
drinking on the job, you scumbag.
Yeah. So I hear the name Takashi, and I thought like, Takashi 6'9" is he's fighting. It's like, wow, witness protection is not really hiding this guy too well. So there's that. I guess one fight from the prelims that I think we do need to give a little attention to: Andrei Arlovski versus Augusto Sakai. What a ridiculous decision. At least from my standpoint, I had Arlovski winning every round. What was your scorecard?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I could have seen Arlovski losing the first, but that's it. I mean, could.
Yeah, that's kind of generous, even. I think.
Yeah. I mean, I like if we're talking about like at a push, what could I have seen? Maybe he could have lost the first round because he complained with the eye poke, but he didn't get it. And maybe if a judge who's not experienced MMA, they could have been like, "Wow, he really seems on the back foot." But yeah, no, to me, it was like pretty obviously Arlovski won that fight. I assume the UFC will treat it as such because they like old Andre. Yeah, it's kind of a weird fight, really. Kind of a weird one.
I'm glad you mentioned the judges saying, "Oh, he's on the back foot," because I think this is the whole reason why he lost his decision. Because I am really, really
You're
tired.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really tired of the idea that just because you're moving forward means that you are effectively controlling the fighting space. I think that is total horseshit. It doesn't make much sense to me. If you are just plodding forward and you're not cutting the cage off, if you're not using effective footwork, and the other guy is kind of dancing around you, I'm sorry, because you're moving forward, are not in control.
I completely agree. And it's so funny because we always complain about this 10 must system that we've inherited from boxing. But yet I think boxing is much better about the pressure fighter is not always the winner. The counter fighter can often be the winner. The exception, of course, being like one time Deontay Wilder was just pressuring and hitting nothing but air, and Tyson Fury was boxing up on the counter. That's the only time that it didn't work for boxing. But in MMA, it's like we've inherited their score system, but we refuse to take the idea that the counter fighter can still like your back against the cage is not a good look, but it doesn't mean you're losing. If you're still slipping punches and like, let's look at Stephan Bonner versus Anderson Silva, that first round. And Anderson just, he just cotches against the back of the cage and he's just chilling. He was still winning though. You know what I mean? It's kind of
he was still in control of that fight.
He was still in control. So he wasn't winning, but that's a bad example because he did let Stephan do what he wanted. But yeah, John Dodson's complained about it a bunch. Forward pressure does not mean they're winning.
Right.
Countering should be a very respected art.
Yeah, it definitely deserves more respect, man.
I mean, Eddie Alvarez was pressuring against Conor at 205. He was a pressure fighter there, and Conor was a counter striker. It's a very extreme example. That means fuck all, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm reminded of Condit versus Diaz. Like I'm thinking of fights of that nature where a guy is backing up, but he's backing up effectively. So now, of course, bringing once again Fury Wilder into this conversation.
Oh yeah, if you want, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think the difference between Andrei Arlovski in this fight and Tyson Fury in that fight was that while Fury is backing up,
Andre was a bit more complicated.
He's not throwing anything. He wasn't throwing anything. He wasn't really landing anything. Arlovski was still hitting Sakai as he's backing up. So that, I think, makes the difference, and you are wrong. However, we have Fugati in the chat saying that he had Fury winning that fight. So both of you are wrong. And
fucking big up, Fugati. Appreciate it.
Shut up, Fugati.
Don't diss your only commenter. Jesus.
I know, right? All right. Fugati, that's my homie too, but you know how nice I am to my friends. Shut up, Oscar.
That's true.
All right, man. So Carla Esparza defeated Virna Jandiroba. I always have trouble saying that name.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I got that. All it took was effort. Not a whole lot to say about this fight. It was an exciting fight to watch as far as the grappling exchanges. I like that. I think the right person won. My scorecard had Esparza winning 29-28. Not mad at the 30-27 that was scored, but 29-28 seems pretty fair to me. Let's see. Gilbert Burns versus Mike Davis. Gilbert Burns submission win. No shock there.
Before you go on, actually,
Yeah.
I think I want to say about Mike Davis is I've heard a lot about Mike Davis, and I think he's actually been unlucky with that pairing because Mike Davis is actually one of the last people to ever train at is it Catskill where Tyson trained with Customato.
Oh, really? Okay.
He trained boxing there. He's one of the last people to train there before it closed down. Like he's got this great heritage behind him. I'd love to see him put him against someone who's not a striker. I think he'd be cool. He's got great boxing. The guy looks great.
Okay, yeah. That's something I didn't know that. I have to look out for that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I just heard that.
Nice. All right. Jim Miller versus Jason Gonzalez. I mean, Jim Miller with a full head of hair.
Jim Miller with hair.
Jim Miller with hair, man. Maybe is this like Dustin Poirier with hair? Is this?
You can only assume he's seen Dustin. You can only assume you got to learn from the best, right? He's seen Dustin with Dustin's hair, and he's just thought, "Well, I need some follicles." Yeah,
the follicles seem to work out for him, man. Jim Miller looks like he still has got it. So I'm also reminded of Brendan Schaub, who used to have the low cut. Now he has a full head of hair that's styled very nicely, and he's taking over media. So that's what's up.
You're not getting the sponsorship, Anthony. Leave him alone.
I was actually thinking of cutting my hair, and then I watched Jim Miller do what he did, and I'm like, okay, I got to keep it.
No, you don't get rid of your hair. Your hair looks right.
Thank you. It's very nice of you, Oscar.
Because you can grow a beard. I think you'd look all right with a shaved head. My hair is obviously disappearing at a rate of knots, but I can't grow a beard. So if I shave my head, I'll just look sick. I won't even look like it's a hairstyle choice. It just looks like I've had some treatment. So
you just look like a white supremacist. Oh, man. All right, so while you collect yourself, we'll go on to Angela Hill versus Jody Escobar. Angela Hill, just total domination in this fight. I had her winning every round.
Angela Lee fucking knocked that down. Angela Hill, not Angela Lee. Angela Hill was great.
Yeah. Angela Hill, fellow Prince George's County, Maryland native, right there. So always happy to see her get a victory.
That was the performance she needed in the UFC.
Yeah,
Dominick Cruz said on commentary that she needed that.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but from my recollection, that is the best that she's looked in the UFC.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, it's everything looked on.
Oh.
Do whatever you want when you want. That is not easy, no matter who you're fighting. So I was very very pleased with Angela Hill's performance there.
Very.
Yeah, it's just, man, it's been a long day, man.
Emotional, was it? Emotional.
PG County, man. PG County.
Yeah.
And the first fight of the night, I don't know what that one was because I was on the way home from a social gathering, so I missed that.
Oh well, I can tell you about it. It was good.
Oh no, actually I did see it. It was Court McGee versus somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, who did Court McGee fight? I can't.
Huh?
Dhiego Lima. Court McGee versus Dhiego Lima. Yeah.
Sorry, the connection's a bit slow. Otherwise, I'd have said that before you. But
I do remember that. I actually did. I had a little buzz in my system as I was in the passenger seat on the way home. But yeah, I did watch that on my phone actually. So Dhiego Lima and Court McGee is a fight that
happened.
It happened, and it was the curtain jerker. There you go.
It's the first prelim, Anthony. Leave these poor bastards to go home.
Yeah.
Come on.
It was that Dhiego Lima's first UFC win?
Did he win? I don't.
Yeah, he won. But was that his first win?
Fuck, I don't know.
I think it was. I think it was Dhiego Lima's first win in the UFC. I could look this up, but honestly, whatever. We'll just shoot the shit for a little bit longer here. So, all right, let me go through the YouTube chat, see what I missed.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. Okay. No, and not that's not including his Ultimate Fighter wins, right?
No, he won at UFC Shogun versus St. Preux. And also at 231.
Okay, cool. That's the first time I can clearly remember Dhiego Lima winning, but hey, looks like I was wrong there.
Right,
Let's
let's
see.
hear these YouTube comments then.
Yeah, in the chat, Peter Gallagher saying McDonald lost the eye of the tiger because of Jesus. Okay. Is Rory MacDonald like this? Did he find religion or something? He seems like he wouldn't be the religion guy.
He seems like the sort of person who would start a religion and have people just following him around.
Yeah, or he would have like some sort of twist on religion, like the that hitman, that Amish hitman in the second season of Punisher.
No, I reckon Rory MacDonald would be the sort of person who's on a hill being like, and now we drink the juice together. And, you know, they all die. I reckon that's Rory. Anyway, carry on.
All right. Fugati also saying, really am loving that shirt, though. I don't know if he's talking about my NWA shirt or your whatever that is you're wearing.
Almost certainly not your shirt, brother. This is a cultural classic.
Yeah, you're wearing that. Yeah, that's what you have on. That's what's up. Let's see what else.
You should see the shorts. Anyway. Fuck, you frozen again. I hope to fuck I'm not the person keeping this call together. If I was, thank God I didn't say anything incriminating. Oh shit, Anthony's been... It looks like his Wi-Fi's gone. Oh man, imagine if it is just me. If it is just me, fans, hello. Let me talk to you on a real one for a second. I'm desperate to go to the bathroom. I've been holding it in for the past while now. And really the fact that I've been keeping it in is a testament to my friendship for Anthony and just general ability as a professional, to be honest. Tell you about me? Sure. That's a joke. No one asked. But I'm 28 next month, which, you know, evokes feelings because that means I'm only 2 years away from being 30. And I'd rather not be 30. That just sort of feels like, you know, a bit shit, really. But yeah. Still waiting on some direction from the old Antinous Walkers. I wonder if I go on his YouTube if I can see your questions. Imagine if I can and I just ran his show. Could you imagine? Fuck, I don't know the name of his fucking YouTube channel. Great friend. But lads, I am gagging for a fucking piss. Your questions better be good. Technical. Oh, Walk of Shame. Is that what it's called? Oh, Grant. Oh, my days. I actually can see myself. Right then, lads. Let's answer your questions until he comes back. I've literally just taken over Anthony's YouTube chat. What am I sipping on, pimp? Well, that's a good question, mate. I'll tell you what, I went over to the CVS earlier and they said they had some extra products that they needed to sell off a bit quicker. So they let me buy some Smirnoff Sorbet Light pineapple coconut drink for $10. And I'll be honest with you, it tastes like shit. But the fact it's only $10 means it's. I mean, what are you gonna do? So here's what I'm going to do, boys, because I can only imagine the aneurysm that Anthony Walker would have if he knew I was in command of his live chat. I'm going to end it here. We've had a great chat. The UFC was good fun. And, I don't know what he signs off with, but I assume it's something like stay black or something like that. I don't know. Peace and love.